Hi, welcome to The Collectors. I'm Kent Lund, your host. In the world of collecting, you often hear the word important, and that word is used to describe an item of great significance or perhaps profound effect. I would describe my guest today as important. He's had profound effect on preservation. The items of his desire in his collection are of great significance. Today, I'm very happy to have on the show my friend and fellow collector, Jim Secreto. Jim, I'm so happy you allow us to see these beautiful items you have.
Well, thanks for having me, Kent. I feel like it's an honor. It was a very nice intro, and I think my collection represents a period in time when the world was different, and it's the circus, and the circus brought the world to the masses, and it was for the common person. And what we have here are carvings by people that were in love with the circus, and these are what they took with them, and
it's their interpretation.
Their interpretation
of a particular part of the circus. Yeah.
Right, and I have a collection of 1-inch scale circus, but what we're going to feature on now is one carver, and it's Albert Kiev, and these are some of his examples. And the reason we're featuring him is because he crossed from circus model builder to really a folk art carver. And these examples are the finest that I've ever seen in my collecting of over 3 decades. And it crosses it encompasses, the circus, folk art, and these are actually mechanical. And here's a good example of what I mean by mechanical. It actually is in working condition. So this is it's a system he made. This is all hand done, hand carved, hand painted. So.
And I think you said earlier, Jim, that he was a professional house painter in the 20s and 30s.
These are carvings that represent him from about the late 20s to the early 30s. You can see by the costuming. And what's interesting about this, it's a little story, if I could add to this.
Please do. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, the story is very interesting. Kiev was a house painter, and he actually was a master carver, as you could see by these examples. But I purchased these from a circus collector named Ned Coburn from White Plains, Minnesota, and he got it from the actual family. And how Ned got these was, Ned is a circus enthusiast, and they ran an article about him in the local newspaper about his collection, and he collected anything circus, clowns, any knickknacks, carvings, paper. And the lady called and said, well, come and see what I have. And Ned was looking for any kind of reference because he's a carver too. So what he did was he answered the call, and he was kind of taken back when he got there because the lady said, here they are. And they were in like cardboard boxes, and they were singed.
Oh.
And he said, well, what happened? And she goes, well, they were in a fire.
Okay.
And she says, well, what happened? And she goes, well, we burned them. So the family was burning the pieces, and this is what was left of
Not to heat their house.
Not to heat their house, but more out of
spite,
satisfaction of this. So what we have here is what's left of the survivors, because according to a newspaper article, he won the local fair, and he exhibited a farm, a carnival, and the circus.
And the farm and carnival
are gone.
Sad story.
Sad story.
But wonderful survivors.
Yeah, these are prime examples, because this is really this is a coffee can that's painted.
They were very resourceful. They would use things that were around. In those years, the 20s and 30s, the money was short. So how can we improvise?
This is a very good word, improvise. And this is a web act. It's a coffee can and it spins. It's very primitive, really. But you can actually see, it says it's a coffee can right here. And this is...
But the girls' bodies are perfect.
Yeah,
the shape,
proportionately
right, the colors.
And we should mention this is 1 inch scale, so it's...
Okay, 1 inch to a foot.
1 inch to a foot.
Scale.
Yeah, 1/12 scale. But the carvings and the gesturing and the paint is just exquisite. As is this balancing bar here.
And I'm sure he did everything, I'm guessing, not sure, but with house paint.
Yeah, house paint,
mixes house paint left over from jobs.
Absolutely. I don't know that for a fact, but I would bet 99%.
I would too.
And this is another prime example of just the proportions and the scale, and it spins. It's really a beautiful piece.
He's captured the actual movement very well.
Yeah, that's the beauty. His people are so believable proportionately. Yeah. The strength in the arms, the gesturing, the muscles. This is just exquisite.
Do we know about how old he was at the time he was doing this?
Oh, I would say he's probably in his 40s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, but yeah.
And you have some other things also by him over here too, that are survivors from the fire or the.
Well, this is a balancing bar. These are tigers, and this is the lion tamer, but this is just the gesture of that is incredible. How relaxed the animal is, and you really have to look at his. What separates him is the painting, the zigzag of the line and that. It's just exquisite. But I think, just to show you back to what you mentioned, Ken, about the ability to improvise, this is a good example right here. This is the wire, this is electrical wire.
That he used for the tail.
Right there.
And then painted it.
And then painted it, yeah. So yeah, if you look at this, the gesturing and the proportion is what separates him. And then he being a house painter, it's just absolutely exquisite.
To me, it's almost like a snapshot. It's captured a second in time on that balance beam, and each animal is in its really what it might be doing in that second.
Oh, absolutely,
it's really
absolutely
well done.
Correct. This is a real exquisite piece. This is a good example. This is a band, and this is the band. If you know anything about Circus, this is the band that played under the big top. So this was the
maybe as you're coming in, they're playing.
Yes, the song, or when they did the parade, they walk around. This is his work. This is Kiev's work. But this is another example of a different carver named Clark, Robert Clark. But this is a minstrel band, and this was by the Sideshow. And I'm showing you this so you can compare. Not that Clark wasn't a good carver, but it's more of a caricature than a realistic style.
Sure. Almost like a cartoon.
Yeah, almost like cartoon-like, but his gesturing is very, very good.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
I can hear him. I can hear him playing right now. That's really neat.
This is really, really a good comparison for the average person. This is another exquisite piece because it's carved out of one solid piece. See, Ken?
Yes, it is, yeah. One solid block of wood.
Yeah, you can almost see the paint there. It's just beautiful. But, he even has the tickets. See the tickets there?
He's got tickets in his hand.
Yeah, well, he painted. Yeah, it's just a beautiful piece.
And that's something I wanted to bring up. Like, that's one solid block of wood. These guys were resourceful, and a lot of times you can see that they were using crate wood or wine baskets, and they would use that wood.
Common thing was cigar boxes.
Cigar box wood. Yep.
That's good. Yeah, this is just beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
This is another example of his work. My collection really has more focus on the performing acts as opposed to the wagons. Wagons were the first thing people built because it was the easiest, and it made a strong impression because, as we talked earlier, when the circus came to town, this was such an event. The whole town participated, and it just went on and on. Well,
and after they unloaded the wagons,
Right.
they would go behind the main street somewhere in storage almost.
Yeah.
Then the circus would be there. So a lot of people didn't see the wagons all the time.
no.
But these acts were...
The wagons actually served a purpose as transportation.
Right.
And then they became decorative because of the parade.
I see.
So,
that makes sense.
And then it just got bigger and bigger. But we are talking about the 1890s, 1900s, when the circus brought the world to the rural communities.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
But what's unusual about my collection is the fact that I focused more on the performing acts, which are harder to find, but I thought had more of a representation of a true circus.
And they also, the acts and the people are a little more difficult to carve.
Yes.
So
yes.
you've got to be a step above the average carver to carve, certainly to carve this handsome.
Yes. And then being such a master carver and then having the ability to be a painter is really just an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
So this shelf here is Kiev's work, and these are just, the gesture of the animals are just incredible. And again, it's like Kent said, the resourcefulness of putting this together. Look at that, Kent. That's just a piece of metal bent and a little bit of wire there.
Yep. Just using what he had around the house, in the workshop or the garage.
Yeah. So this is just superior.
Earlier you mentioned that horse, Jim. Just briefly, is that a woman carver or is that Kiev?
No. This isn't Kiev.
Okay.
This is Clark. But that's a very good question. Is the carver would be influenced by the performing acts, and this is Dorothy Herbert, and she was a bareback rider. She was the first female, so she was featured in Ringling Brothers.
Got it. So he thought that was important.
This is important because of who she was in carving or in the circus. You could see how she rode like that.
Oh yeah, at first you don't realize she's laying back.
Yeah,
that's part of her act.
Right. She was like a trick rider, but she was the first female and a major performer for Ringling Brothers. As was this gentleman here. This is Herb Castle, and he's the first man to jump through a hoop on a tight wire.
On a tight wire.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
wow.
he's another featured performer.
Okay.
Kit, why don't you hand me that little ringmaster, and we're gonna.
I'm scared to do this. You know.
That's okay.
I'm not insured.
Okay. Yeah. But this is a good example of the two different styles. This is a Clark, which is still. This is 3/4 scale. This is 1-inch scale, and this is Kiev. But you can see the mastery of the paint, the gesturing of the coat, the top hat. This is an exquisite carving, but this is a masterful carving.
And again, this could be 20s or 30s.
No, this is definitely 20s, 30s. This is more like the 50s,
okay.
60s. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to set this down very carefully.
Be very careful.
I'm mindful. I'm being very mindful. Was there something else on this wall you want to talk about?
Well, I think you should take a look at this. This is kind of
I love this.
That's
the work crew.
The work crew. And the thing about this is, to find a work crew, a person would have to do a complete circus. So that's hundreds and hundreds of pieces, and this is just the gesturing of this is just incredible. And I just
again, it's literally like a snapshot.
It's a snapshot in time,
and it's perfect.
Yeah,
you've captured each movement of all those guys.
Well, the carver did. I did.
Yeah, right. Well, you captured them.
Yeah,
you saved them.
Yeah, I saved them. But yeah, to find anything that pertains to the back lot and that, that takes a carver years to do a whole circus.
Right,
It takes a long time.
Handsome.
Yeah.
Really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, now we're in a little different section here. We're going to talk about the wagons. Jim, what do we have here? We have 3 wagons.
Yeah, we have 3 examples of 3 different carvings, all 1-inch scale. And we'll start, this is a flat-sided, anonymous, done in West Virginia, and it's basically just 4 sides of wood. Where you have the master carver, this is an Art Nouveau style. This is very interpretive in the sense that no wagon was actually like this. And the key to it is the animals inside are carved, and the painting here is just beautiful, but it's very decorative, as opposed to this, which is a pure 1-inch scale of a bird cage done exquisitely by a carver named Smith. This was done by Kiev, and this is unknown.
What strikes me is the detail in the wheels. This one and this one particularly. Those wheels, they spent hours,
days. They're called rainbows. Yeah,
rainbows. Okay.
Yeah, and this you could see is this is more toy-like, but
yes.
this is still done by a carver. This is another fine example.
Okay.
This is a master right here. This is the double hemisphere. It was the largest wagon ever produced. It's 28 feet.
So it existed in real life.
It existed in real life, as did the bird cage. The bird cage did.
Okay.
That's a Ringling Brothers, or I don't know if that was Ringling Brothers. But this is considered the classic because it's so big, and it was, even for carving, that's quite an undertaking for a carving, a master carver to take. It weighs a tremendous amount.
I wonder how many horses it took to pull that.
I think it took 40 horses. It took two men to drive it, and the horse, the length of the horses was as long as the
40-some feet.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
It was beautiful.
That's
but this is considered a master circus model piece right here.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And we have one more item we want to look at, right? Let's go.
Okay.
So now we've gone through the performing people in the hand-carved folk art circus. We've looked at some wagons. Now we're looking at a mechanical marvel, and it's probably the holy grail of folk art circus carving. Would you say, Jim?
Yes, it's the star of my collection, and what this represents is the sideshow performers, and it's a mechanical apparatus that the different parts of the circus, like the fan moves, the rabbit comes up, the monkey's arm moves, and the kangaroo comes out of the pouch. And this is all carved by Kiev, master carver. Like, this is a famous performer. This is the Ubangi lady. That's the strong man and the magician. And this is the elephant and the tamer. But when you plug it in, it's electronic and it moves. It all goes up and down. Again, it's the painting and the positioning and the gesture. Added to that, it's a performance, and it all works mechanically.
Yeah, it's a mechanical marvel. The linkage underneath the animals and the people is phenomenal. The way it's put together and the way it operates. And we can show that if we'd like to plug it in. We can show how
we'll plug it in, sure.
We'll show how it works. It's really something.
This is what makes this piece so rare, is it's exquisitely carved, it has animation, and the performers are identifiable.
Yep. Unique mechanical animation.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What year again? What about?
I would say this is the 30s, early 30s.
And how did you find this?
It's a very interesting story. I got this 17 years after I purchased the original stuff from my friend Ned. What happened was I would call him. We became very good friends. We're still friends today. And he would call and say, "How's it going?" We'd chit chat. And I'd always ask, "How's the sideshow?" Jokingly, never thinking I would own it. And then one day he called and said, "Jim, I think it's time I give it to you, and I know you'll appreciate it." And I said, "Well, I don't want to, what's the situation?" He said, "I asked everyone in my family, and they chose, and I want you to have this." So it took 17 years after I purchased the original one to actually get this phenomenal piece.
Which every collector waits for that phone call.
Waits for the phone call.
Yeah.
And it completed the cycle, and I have to say, I had tears in my eyes when I saw it in person.
I'm sure, and every family, they're concerned about where this artwork is going by their loved one who made it.
Yes.
And it's nice of them to think of you, and even if 17 years later, and you've got probably all the surviving work that he had.
Yes,
that he had done.
And I think that was Ned's intent.
Okay.
That it would be incomplete, and he knew how I respected it, and I've kept it. So it's the rightful home for it,
That's beautiful.
and I'm only the caretaker of it till the next generation.
I understand. Well, it's good that you got that. Now we got one more very important thing, because I know you have several banners, circus banners, hand painted by itinerant painters.
Yeah. Actually, this is very fitting for this arrangement because this is a performer of a circus, and this banner is the ultimate sideshow banner, and it's done by Eisman, who was the master carver, and this was done in the 30s. And it's considered, in my opinion, a masterpiece because it's the performance, it's the artist, it's the way it's aged, and it's just a classic banner.
And where did you find this?
I found this at an auction of a famous collector. I flew to Florida. I was up 48 hours, and I stood up and said, I want this.
And by the way, I think you mentioned it earlier when we were talking that a lot of these banners ended up in Florida because the circus performers and the painters and the people that built the circus retired to Florida.
Right, it's Gibbstown.
Gibbstown, Florida.
Right.
Okay.
And what happened was, this is where it ended up. So.
Well, I'm glad you got it.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's preserved.
I'm glad these two things are the ultimate in collecting.
Yeah,
in
that's
my
wonderful.
opinion. And
well, Jim, I'm so happy you had us here to see your collection, and I guess I would say if you have any questions for Jim or myself, or if you have a collection you'd like to talk about, happy to have you on the show. I'd love to. Just contact me at bctvthecollectors@gmail.com. Thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.